Today I go to see my first movie of 2017, but being 2017, I think the novelty of going to the theaters worn off. Split, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, starring James McAvoy and Anya Taylor-Joy, was not a good movie. A little over a year ago, I started going to the theater again. I went when I was a kid, but then I stopped in my early 20s. So just the thrill of being out in public and having the massive screen kind of skewed my opinion on the movies I was actually seeing. Whereas this one felt more like I was watching it at home, or I felt a little bit more comfortable in the scenario where my heart wasn't racing the entire time. And also probably because there's a douchebag couple next to me who wouldn't shut up, and that's very familiar being home. So this movie, I think, had I seen it a year ago when this was still novel to me, I would have liked it a lot more, but I saw it for its flaws in this one. First of all, right off the bat, it did look spectacular. The cinematography of it and some of the actual camera shots, it was like if Wes Anderson had made this. It was real quirky. There was a shot of James McAvoy as the 9-year-old version of himself dancing, and it just looked adorable. So the story is James McAvoy is a guy named Kevin who has 23 individual personalities, and I don't think that Kevin itself is one of them. But primarily in this movie, we deal with three. Dennis is this like tough guy with OCD who basically was brought to life as a response to his mother's abuse early on in his life. Patricia is sort of like a clone of his mother. She's real stern and disapproving, but Dennis at least listens to her a lot and takes what she says to heed. And then the third one is Hedwig, who's 9 years old and has red and blue socks and just ate a hot dog. And he says etc. a lot. Like everything you saw him in the trailer, that like it was followed up with etc. because it was clearly a new word that he learned and he liked. And I liked that. James McAvoy was fantastic in this movie. Probably my favorite performance he's ever done. But it's going to be worth rewatching. Like I didn't really like this movie, but I would totally rewatch it because I think that there's a lot of things that I'll pick up on the second time that might help. But the first time, this was a pretty rough watch. So anyway, Kevin, mostly Dennis, kidnaps these three girls. He wants two of them, but Anya Taylor-Joy just happened to be with him by pure chance. So he kidnaps the girls, takes them to his secret lair, and then Patricia shows up, and then they start talking about a beast that's coming. And the girls are basically going to be sacrificed to the beast because they're impure, which basically to Dennis and Patricia means that they haven't had to suffer any hardships. He's basically blaming the world for being as happy as it is. So then, one thing leads to another, and the end of the movie comes around with the beast. Basically, it's a mixture of all the different animals at a zoo that he works at, because this whole thing takes place under a zoo, which doesn't come up until the very end. Like it's supposed to be some kind of important reveal, but it doesn't really. There's a lot of things that I felt didn't pay off as well. There was a bunch of flashbacks to Anya Taylor-Joy's childhood as a hunting with her dad and uncle. They kept coming up, and they weren't real clear what they were leading up to until it turned out she was getting molested by her uncle. Eventually leading to her being adopted by her uncle when her dad has a heart attack. And then, because that, at the end, James McAvoy has Anya Taylor-Joy like trapped in a cage, and he's like clawing through it to get to her, and he's got bullet wounds in him, and he's fine because he's invincible now. But like he sees her scars from the abuse her uncle inflicted, and it was like a Martha moment from Batman versus Superman. It's just immediately his motivation to kill her is just gone, and then he stumbles off into the into the night. And I just felt that was weak. That all that time making me super uncomfortable just for that, just as like a Deus Ex Machina almost, just to free her. It's not Deus Ex Machina if it's set up. Whatever. Anya Taylor-Joy was really good, but I think her character was all over the place, really erratic. In the beginning, she was real weak and not fighting back at all. And the other two girls, who were not very good at all. The other two girls kept trying to escape, but Anya Taylor-Joy just, was standing in the background trying to talk them out of it. But she did have some useful tips on how to prevent certain things. she recognized Dennis had OCD and told this one girl to pee on herself so he'd freak out. But like when you think about it, that she's been dealing with this kind of abuse for years, you think that maybe she wouldn't want to just sit back quietly, you know? But that's the kind of movie this was. It was a real slow burn suspense movie that I think had some pacing issues. It was a little bit, it was real fast in the beginning and then slowed way the fuck down and then sped right back up at the end, which is like a pretty good chart of how the movie went in terms of my interest, where right off the bat they get kidnapped in like 5 minutes, which was perfect. No dicking around and like introducing them ahead of time because it was done. The character introductions were done very well, but then it just dropped for a long time and then started picking back up again about the time the Beast came around. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about this. Suspense movies are not really my forte, but I didn't like this one. And that's not a good sign for the rest of the year unless it doesn't matter. One of the two. All right. Bye.